From New York, it's That Kevin Show.
See, I knew it.
Come on, Kev. What's a few classified documents between friends?
I told you all the time. I knew it. I knew he had some too.
Here he is, That Kevin McCullough.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my next guest, I am very pleased to have with us, as she was the first female physician to be a representative in the United States Congress. And she also stems from the Empire State, and she is very concerned about the cost of basic medical concerns for Americans, and she has some insight on what's still going on. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Congresswoman Nan Hayward. Hello, Nan.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me as your guest.
You represented New York's 19th district, and Mr. Lawler sits in the seat that you used to sit in. I helped him get elected here in the New York City area. Very happy that he is where he is at. And part of kind of a little bit of a red wave that happened in your state this year. It took you nearly doubled the number of Republican representatives in Congress.
Mike Lawler represents me in the House, and now it's the 17th district because New York continues to lose population. And so much of that, as you and I both know all too well, is due to the excessive hand of the state in punishing the folks who are working hard and trying to make a living and raise their families here.
Well, and we saw that even come to more fruition on the state level as well during COVID, and the combination of the 1-2 punch in what happened to the city and to the statewide was a real tragedy. Felt maybe more acutely by New Yorkers than a lot of other places just because of the size of the impact here. I want to get to some of that in a bit. I want to, this week, it was revealed by Mr. Comer on the Oversight Committee, and you served in some oversight capacity. You were with the Financial Committee, and you did on the subcommittee there on oversight. So you're familiar with the role that Congress has in saying to the other branches, yes and no, and that's part of the checks and balances that our founders built into all of this.
Right.
And when Republicans were campaigning in Lawler's last election, when they were coming to power, they campaigned hard on opening up honest investigations and getting to the bottom of a lot of things. But I don't think anybody thought that had not been paying attention very well. Some of us had been, but I don't think anybody that had not been paying attention very closely thought that the corruption stuff was going to be as bad as it is. And this week we saw Mr. Comer announce that they had evidence of bank wires coming to Joe Biden's personal residence in Delaware. What is the impact of that on this entire discussion of their corruption and what it represents?
Smoke, meat, gun, right? I mean, the thing that there are a couple of things, I think, Kevin, that your savvy and well-informed listeners need to contemplate together. One is, will this kind of news hit the dominant media, as my buddy Mark Halperin calls it? And I know that yesterday I saw an item, and it may have been Joe Concha, noted that none of the major networks had covered that item at all yesterday. 0 minutes devoted to that. So if this kind of evidence breaks through to the broader public, and it's trickling through, you can see that in polling. Folks know there's something wrong with Joe Biden. There's something corrupt about him. There's something unfair about the way the Department of Justice has been applying pressure on one side very heavily and selectively, and not on the other. So people are aware there's something wrong. But this kind of thing, as you know, Kevin, is only discovered because we have that Republican majority in the House, as narrow as it is.
Yeah.
Right. And if we had a Democrat majority in the House, none of this would have come to light. And those whistleblowers from the IRS, now being corroborated by the FBI, telling us that, they were told to back off Hunter Biden, to slow walk things, to ignore things. None of that would have come to light without a Republican majority in the House.
Kevin McCarthy, who you did not get to serve under as speaker.
I did actually. Well, not as speaker, but as whip.
You served with him, yes. And so there was you're familiar with his style. He has opened the inquiry, but he's not rushing to an actual impeachment proceeding. Some people may not understand why that's the case. What powers does opening the inquiry give the committees and the Congress without having to proceed directly to the impeachment proceedings?
Sure. Well, they have subpoena power, so they can bring evidence to the public, and that really is in this context today, because we have a Democrat, although narrow, a Democrat majority in the Senate. So realistically, we are not going to get a conviction vote in the Senate, even if the Republicans decided to impeach Joe Biden. The House impeaches, the Senate tries. So, that process doesn't go to conviction unless the Senate convicts. They didn't convict President Trump, obviously, either time that the Democrat House brought.
But to your point, what you said, bringing it to the public's attention, that's one way that we can get these stories out, because if James Comer subpoenas information and then brings it to the public, people have to pay attention to it.
Exactly. That's the key. And I think Kevin McCarthy has an extraordinarily challenging position as the speaker in this House with this House majority. And I think he's handled it adroitly. And I think opening an inquiry is the right thing to do. And look, what we were just discussing, Kevin, the outrages that are being exposed should trouble every American. And the key is, of course, to continue hammering away and letting things drift into the public view, even if the major news media are dragging their feet. And because the point I want to emphasize too, Kevin, if I may, is that, we talk rightly about Joe Biden and his incompetence and his corruption and his disintegration before our very eyes. But let's bear in mind, Joe Biden is the Democrat Party. There is no daylight between Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. So whatever you see that Joe Biden is doing wrong, all the failures of Joe Biden, all of his corruption, quite honestly, the Democrat Party has stood foursquare behind him.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. There's an increasing rumble of people that say that even Democrats are starting to understand that he is not going to fare well in another election cycle. And there's all kinds of ideas about who might take his place.
Absolutely.
I think it's a little early to put all the money on any horse on that side of the aisle just yet, but we'll wait and see. We're going to take a break. We're speaking with former Congresswoman Nan Hayworth, who, as a physician, has a thing or two to say about some of the healthcare policies of our country and what she would like to see happen. We'll get to that next. Stay with us.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin.